Earlier, I told you that the idea of functional programming is to write a bunch of small and reusable functions and then compose them to build more complex functions for solving real-world problems. Here's a real example. Let's say we have a variable called input, and we set it to JavaScript. Now let's add some padding around this. Let's say we want to get the input, trim it, and then wrap it inside a div element. So we declare another variable. Here we add the opening element. Next we add our trimmed input. And finally the closing element. Not bad, it works. This is a non-functional style of code. Now let me show you how to solve this problem using functional programming techniques. So what are the two steps that we need to follow here? First, we need to trim the string, and then we need to wrap it inside a div element. So we can implement each step using a small reusable function. So I can declare a function called trim that takes a string and returns the trimmed string. Okay. Here I'm using const because I don't want to reassign this function. Okay. Now similarly, we can create another function, wrap in div, that takes a string. It doesn't care if the string is trimmed or not. It only wraps the string inside a div element. So here we can add an expression like this, div plus str plus /div, or we can use a template string that is cleaner and more concise. So instead of using quotes, we use the backtick character, and here we define a template. So we add our div element. Now in the middle, we want to render the string dynamically. So we add a $sign and wrap it with braces. And with this, we can render this dynamically. Okay. So now we have two small and reusable functions. These functions, as you can tell, are very easy to test. All we have to do is to give them an input and then observe the result. Very simple. Now, what do we want to do here? We have this input, right? We want to trim it first. So we call the trim function and pass the input. The trim function is going to return the trim string. So we can pass that as an argument to our second function, wrap in div. There you go. So we get the result. And this is what we call function composition in functional programming. Now we could take this to the next level. We can also create another function for converting a string to lowercase. So to lowercase. Once again, this function takes a string and returns the string in lowercase. Now we can take the output of the trim function and pass it to lowercase. So this is another example of composition. Now we have a couple of tiny problems here. The first problem is that we have to read this expression from right to left. So we have an input, then we need to trim it, next we need to convert it to lowercase, and then wrap it in div. That's one problem. The other problem is all these parentheses here. As we work with more complex problems, we'll end up with so many parentheses. I'm going to show you how to solve these problems in the next lesson.